Episode 138 of the Drive-By Podcast with Melina Roberge is coming up in just a second. But first, special thanks to our sponsor here at the Drive-By Podcast, Legace Lafrenière. 5 great Montreal locations and voted top pastry shop and bakery time and time again, #1 in Montreal. Check them out for all of your life's precious moments. Custom cakes, they make those as well. Go to lesdeliceslafrenière.com. It's Les Délices Lafrenière.
This is the Drive-By with Freeway Frank.
Hi, Melina.
Hi.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
We just started like that, by the way.
Good.
There's no big intro, nothing like that.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for being on the Drive-By Podcast, episode 138. We've been doing some chatting right behind Melina on the very manly man cave couch. And then I said, like usual, when I have guests on, we need to stop talking and do this on the podcast. If not, all the good stuff, no one's going to hear.
Exactly.
I mean, even though I really enjoyed our conversation. So thanks for coming. In a nutshell, because there's so much stuff that I want to ask you. And your story gained international attention. Mm-hmm. Notorious. You have this notorious story and face now around the world. But I want to cut through a lot of the BS that maybe your typical media outlets that I may have been part of the past, but no longer, painted you and Isabelle. In a nutshell, I'm just going to say what happened, and then we're going to start from the beginning because there's a lot to talk about. So basically, back in 2016, you were on a cruise ship along with 5 other people, where there may have been some drug smuggling involved. So I don't know if the proper term is drug mule or whatever you want to call it, but you end up, this crew of 6 people smuggling 95 kilos of cocaine into Sydney, Australia. And you get caught, you go to jail, and you spend 5 years in jail. Insane. Yeah. When just from the start, when you look back at it after I said that, can you believe that this is what happened to you? Do you wake up every morning and do you still think about it? And of course you still think about it, but is it the first thing you think about when you wake up and the last thing you think about when you go to bed, or you've moved past that now?
No, I think I wouldn't say I went past it. I just made peace with it. Because I think for a long time when I came back, I was still dreaming about it. I was waking up in the morning like stressing out because I thought I was still there, and it was just like adapting to my normal life again, accepting that I'm back home. But I don't think about it anymore when I wake up or when I go to bed. It's mostly when just little things, like sometimes I'll be walking in Montreal and I see beautiful graffiti or whatnot, and I'll be appreciating that, or just going out to grab a coffee, because it's all things that when I was in jail I was thinking about and I couldn't wait to do and have my freedom back. So it's not necessarily that I think about it all the time. It's just like some situations will remind me of how I felt when I was over there, and to keep being grateful, because I think we forget a little bit sometimes,
until something happens to us.
Until something happens.
Yeah. Then you're like, oh, I appreciate life.
Yeah, for sure.
And every day we have on this planet.
Yeah.
It is, when I think about it, I really do believe, and I'm not just saying this, I believe it could have happened to anyone. A lot of people, when you hear people talk about your story, will say, well, they did it, and they had to pay for their mistake, and it was a crime, and they went to jail, and they didn't have to make that decision. I'm a true believer that we all make mistakes in life, and this was a terrible...
Some bigger than others.
Wow, this was a massive mistake. But okay, let's go back. So you grew up here in Quebec, in the Montreal area, in Granby. On the South Shore. So
Are you from there?
Well, I'm not from there, but I've been living in Brossard for 6 years.
30-ish minutes away.
Yeah, exactly, from where you are. So you grew up. Was your childhood normal?
Very.
Now, because I'm trying to understand, okay,
we'll paint a portrait.
Let's paint the portrait, because how did this happen? I want to know. Your childhood was very normal. Mm-hmm. Two very loving parents.
Two loving parents, nothing missing, always food on the table. It's just a regular life. But when I was younger, I was someone that struggled a lot with my self-esteem, and I thought that I wasn't pretty, and I was kind of overweight when I was younger, and some people would be good at pointing it and making me feel bad or ugly. And that's something that was stuck in me for a long time, and still today. I think that words are very powerful, and that's one thing that people have to be careful, is because it has more weight than we think most often. But yeah, I was a bit overweight and went to high school and did my years in high school, and at some point, I think it was in secondaire 3, how do you say in English?
Secondary 3.
Secondary
Yeah.
3. I started using drugs, ecstasy, speed, whatever, because I was in the wrong group of friends, obviously. And then I started to lose weight. And when I started to lose weight, I started to get, like, people were noticing me more. People were telling me that I looked better, and I got my braces off and felt better about myself. And that's, like, I'm putting this in a nutshell. It was, over a few years.
Yeah.
But all in all, when I lost weight, that's when I started to get attention, which I didn't for a very long time. And I loved it. And I always wanted more. And I feel like all the decisions that I was taking was in relation to, was I going to get attention, or was someone going to tell me something that would make me feel good about myself? And when I left high school, I started to work in different jobs. And at some point that was back in, if I'm not wrong, it was 2013 or 2014 that I started to work for a big jewelry store. And I was promoted to manager in Montreal. So I was working a lot, 60 hours a week. I was making a really good salary. I was, had my apartment, my car. I had a roommate with me, and everything was fine. But a lot of the girls that I used to hang out with were, and that's not, like, I'm not judging anybody working in this area, but a lot of them were sex workers. And I was one of the only ones that wasn't in this industry. But I think everybody knows that sex workers make quite a lot of money, depending on a lot of things, but generally.
Escorting? Or is the word more?
One of them was a stripper as well. Okay. Like, everything that surrounds that industry.
So you were hanging out with escorts, strippers, and...
Not by choice. It's all of them were high school friends. Okay. And some of them were childhood friends.
Yeah, and I'm sure good people, obviously. Very good people. But and maybe we're doing things that they didn't even understand why they were doing it.
Exactly.
Or some people choose to do that kind of stuff and are okay with it.
Yeah. And there's no judgment. Again, everybody does what they want with their life. But with me being around them, you see them spending money like it's not a big deal, and purses and food and clothes and everything that I was working so hard to get. But I had a good salary, but I wasn't making a ton. But I wanted that lifestyle as well. So me hanging around them was just feeding me with greed, I guess you could say, and everything superficial. And that I never actually asked myself the question, like, if ever I get all of that, will I actually be happier? Like, if I get all the Louis Vuitton purses, the nice car, I can go to the restaurant every day, will I feel like I accomplished something? Or is it all, superficial shit is going to fade away at some point. You could have all the purses that you want. You can have all the cars that you want. If you don't have love in your day-to-day life, if you don't feel like you have genuine relationships with people that want you in their life for the right reasons and for who you are and not what you have to, bring to the table in terms of money or whatnot, superficial is not the key. You know what I mean? I had to learn this the hard way by having all of that taken away from me overnight.
And basically. I think a lot of people do learn it eventually, some harder than others. Yeah. You really had to learn it the hard way.
Yeah, for sure.
There's nothing worse than, well, there is worse.
There is worse.
Death
for sure.
is, you wouldn't be here today.
No, and I was fortunate, even though, like, I went to jail in the country that's the furthest from Canada.
Crazy.
You know what I mean? Yeah. I had no family over there, no friends. I had one person that I knew, and we weren't very, very close once we were incarcerated. So you feel very much alone, but it could have been worse. I could have been arrested in another country, could have been sleeping on the floor. You know what I mean? Australia and Canada are pretty much hand in hand in terms of, like, apparently the system, it works pretty much the same way. We're both under the queen, you know what I mean? We all have the
Absolutely.
same privileges.
Yes.
So I don't think it was hell on earth in terms of where I was living. It was mostly people, like who you live with was the hardest, and not
Yeah.
having anybody to like talk to
Yeah.
except your family, which you have 6 minutes a day.
It's more the personalities that you encounter in the jail, the day-to-day stuff in the jail. But
The guards.
had you been, can you imagine this happen in a port of Mexico
No.
or you're in a Mexican jail
Hell
or
no.
any third world country? Those 5 years would have been
I
felt like 20
honestly
years. I'm
do
sure.
not think I would be here today.
No, you wouldn't have made it. A lot of people don't make it.
I was 22, you know what I mean? Like I did my best, and at times
Yeah.
I didn't know if I was going to make it out, but I did, fortunately. But I don't think, put me in any other jail that are not, like we still had a roof over our heads, we had a bed, we had, you know what I mean? Like the necessities, the basics.
Considering you were in jail, it was not a bad
No, it was,
environment there in Australia.
the environment was disgusting, but the place where you lived, like amenities wise, was fine.
They were all there.
Yeah.
But let's go back just a tiny bit. So you're in high school,
Yeah.
you leave high school, and do you move to, did you eventually move to the city of Montreal?
Yeah, so when
You're-
I was hanging out with the girls, I was living in Longueuil
Okay.
with a roommate, and then we started to go out all the time. And that was, I'm fast forwarding a lot, and I'm just noticing that I forget a lot
Okay,
of
well,
details.
if you forget, like, here's the thing. This is a very free-form podcast.
Yeah.
You forget something?
I forgot something
Go
very
back.
important.
Yeah, but we'll
We're
mention
rewinding.
it. Yeah. Rewind.
Yeah.
We're back.
So after high school, I started to study in sales, and I met a guy in school, and we were together for 2 years. I'm not gonna like make it super long, but this particular relationship was very toxic in a way that I wasn't allowed to have social media. I wasn't allowed to see my friends. I wasn't allowed to go in certain places because I found out later on that he would bring other girls to those places, and he was scared that the staff would eventually do 1 + 1 and tell me.
So he was a very controlling, manipulative.
Yeah, 100%. And I should have left.
Your age, older?
When I met him, I was probably 17.
Okay. And he was?
Same age.
Oh, same age.
Yeah.
Okay.
So eventually I left him. And when I left him, I felt like an animal in a cage that was finally released. And one thing about me, and I'm still like that today, and that's something I have to work on, is if I feel like I'm being pulled back, when you let me go, I'm gonna like be 1,000% out there, not like a little bit. And that's one thing that I don't know why I'm like that. And I don't know if it's because, you know, with my relationship with him, but also with jail, I feel like anyone who tries to pull me back, it's just gonna make me want to go further even more.
Full force. Which is what you did.
Which is what I did.
Yeah.
So when I left him, I started to go out with my girlfriends that I didn't see for like 2 years. So we went all in, going out every weekend. We were having bottles paid by whoever was there, always free drinks, free everything.
And this is a big thing. Okay, you were doing this back in the mid, let's say 2014,
14, 15.
15, around there.
Yeah.
This now seems to me at least to be the norm.
100%.
You see it I see it on people's Instagrams, but even when I walk into places sometimes, and I have no kids, but I walk in and I go, whoa, what's going on
crazy.
here? And it's bottles everywhere.
100%.
And I see, this is what I see. Older men, younger women.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine the men are, not imagine, I know the men are paying for everything. And so this has become almost like a culture.
It's normal.
It's been normalized. Back then, maybe not as...
It still was, but not as much.
Now it's like the norm.
Mm.
So you're hanging out in nightclubs?
Yeah,
Okay. Only in nightclubs.
Pretty much every single day. I would go to bed at 3, 4 a.m. and I was working at 8. I was always going to work. I would never call off or sick or whatnot. And I was just having that lifestyle that I thought was what I wanted for a long time. Because I felt seen, you know. You go in a club and guys think you're cute and they get you some free drinks and tell you're pretty, and that's
it.
That's it. Pretty much. You don't get anything else but compliments. And then this one night, one of my friends invited me to dinner at this restaurant in Montreal, and I said yes. And I went there, and this older man was sitting at the table, and she told me prior to me arriving there that this guy was there, and he was always paying for everybody that was eating with him, like however many people there were at the table, he would
was a
always
rich
bring.
man, and
He was a rich man, and he would take
he
the
loved
bill.
to be in the company
Exactly.
of younger women.
Yeah.
So this guy was what? How old?
He was in his end of 40s, maybe.
Okay.
Beginning of 50s, something like that. So I went there, and I wasn't sitting right in front of him at the beginning, so we didn't really talk. We introduced ourselves at the beginning, and that was it. And I was talking to my friend all night. And at some point, we all started to do like musical chair and talking to everybody that was there. And I ended up being in front of him. And he was asking me how I was and what my life looked like. And I just got out of the relationship with my ex. So I told him all of that. And he was like, oh my God, like you're too pretty to have gone through that. And you deserve so much better, blah, blah, blah.
And how old are you now at this point?
I was 20.
20 years old.
Yeah, 19 or 20,
Okay.
I think, around that. And then we went out after. He paid for everybody. We went out, bottles, everything. And we gave each other's number.
Now, can I ask you, okay,
Yeah.
what's going on in your mind in terms of this is something that you weren't used to? You're hanging out with these girls that are hanging out with these older men, in this case, this individual that you met. And in your mind, I'm going to be straight up.
Go.
You're using him, or you're interested in him
I'm not
in
interested.
a weird way. You're just interested in what
I
he's
just
giving
don't
you.
care.
Yeah, but you like the fact that you're getting free stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Who wouldn't at that point?
But in the same, I wasn't the only one. That was, if he would have only paid for my bill, it would have been weird to me. And
He was
I don't
paying
think
for a bunch of girls.
everybody.
Okay.
You know what
Your
I
whole
mean? So I
group. How
wasn't
many girls?
singled out. That night there was guys too.
Okay.
We would have been like 10 or 12 people around the table, something like that. And it was so awesome. Like that night was so cool. We had so much fun. But yeah, and then from that point on, we stayed in contact, and pretty much every week he would go out to dinner with friends, girlfriends, whatever. Like I was never ever alone with him, ever. And he would just be like, oh, tonight we're going there if you want to join. And then I'd finish work, go home, get ready, have a glass of wine, and leave.
Did you ever think there was an ulterior motive?
Ever, never,
Never.
ever.
Not even, it didn't even
Not
cross your mind.
even.
That, what's this older guy want from me?
No, because
Beautiful young woman.
like I said, it's not only me. If I was the one and only person that he would invite to dinner and pay everything, I mean, there's no such thing as a free meal. You know what I mean? Like, if someone's inviting you, unless he's like interested in being in a relationship, there's no reason why he would pay everything all the time. But back then, we were always a group. Like, he would invite his girlfriends, and he would invite me, and we would end up being like 6 or 7.
His girlfriends.
Yeah,
Or
he only had
a crew of
he had a
girls.
few guy friends, but mostly we were always girls with him, and maybe like 2 guys. And it was always the same thing every week. It never changed. So why would I have had a red flag? You know what I mean?
Did he have a business? Did you know what he did?
I
Or never asked.
I did ask. He told me he was working in jewelry, but like some sort of online stuff.
Okay.
I didn't really care, to be honest. Like, and that's one thing today that I'm very
Ask
particular
questions.
about.
Yeah.
so
But you don't
yeah.
know. I mean, to be fair,
Yeah.
at that age, when I was that young, now looking back, I go, what was I thinking at half the stuff? You do stupid things.
And you think you
really
know
do.
everything.
Yeah, you think you know
Yeah.
everything, and you have no fear of death. People jump out of planes,
Yeah.
do this. I went on a stunt plane. I always talk about it, doing flips in the air. In hindsight, now looking back, going, what was I
Why?
thinking of all this? Or, you do. I spent a lot of time in Vegas when I was younger. I had the last guest on this podcast, Rick, and I. We used to go to Vegas all the time, and we were talking about that, just crazy things that we ended up doing, and it's just not our character, right? And but I never. For me, it was more about the gambling in Vegas and the hanging out and the great meals and.
I mean, it's one thing to want to live
Yeah.
like a trip to Vegas. I think everybody wants to go to Vegas at
Yes.
some point because everybody talks about it and it's such a big deal
Yeah.
but for me back then, when I think about it, and what I think is so stupid right now is I'm so far from all of that. I'm so far from the girl that I was at 22, and I always ask myself, like, what did I really want? Like, what was my purpose?
What were you searching for?
What was
Yeah,
I searching
yeah.
for? And I think that's the one thing you're talking about, the generation right now. The biggest problem right now, I think, is that girls and guys, I'll give you an example. You're going to go to a high school and you'll ask a bunch of guys, what do you want to do in your life? I'm pretty sure 80% of them are going to say, I want to be an entrepreneur. Do you know what that means?
Yeah.
Do you know the sacrifices? You don't count the hours. It's people don't know why they want things, but they just want it because it's popular. And same for the girls. The girls don't want to have A's and B's in their grades. They want to have 50,000 followers on Instagram or TikTok. And they think that this is what's going to build them into being a great adult and have a career. And I'm not saying it's not true, because I'm on Instagram all the time and I spend a lot of hours on Instagram, but I invest those hours for my job to work. And my job is to be a hairdresser and to build up my clientele. So this is a tool for me. It's not my life. You know what I mean? Instagram, if it crashes tomorrow, I still have a whole bunch of girls that are coming to me already, and I'll just find another way to get more. But we have to use it as a tool and not a necessity in our day-to-day life, especially if you're only using it for entertainment. So back then, I think that's what was driving me, is that I was looking at my Instagram and my algorithm and everything that would go through my
Me too,
screen.
I look at it all the time.
Right?
And I'm an old guy.
But I was seeing all these girls that had perfect bodies, perfect life, cars, money, guys with big ass flowers coming to them every day, and think this is real life and this is what I want. But why? Do I really care? I didn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Even today, I'm so good in my life. I have my own place. I have my dog. I don't need anybody to bring me flowers. I can buy myself flowers. Sorry.
I was going to sing another song.
Anyway, where I'm going with that is everything that I was doing back then was driven by superficiality. Everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And after hanging around this guy for a while, he started to introduce me to his friends, his guy friends. And
just lowering the mic so that we could see your face.
My face.
Yeah.
Yeah, he would introduce me to some of his friends, and that was like maybe a year in that we knew each other. And mind you, this guy became my really good friend, saying like, we never were sexually intimate together, we never kissed, we never slept together in the same bed. It was truly a friend.
This older gentleman.
Yes.
Okay, I'm from the school of thought, Generation X, when I was, back in the day, your age group, even though I was a guy. If I was hanging out with a woman, or if I were single today, and I'm hanging out with somebody that's way, way younger than me, there has to be a motive for doing it. Most of the time, it's because men are into younger women.
Yeah.
Okay, but this really never crossed your mind. You never, he just wants to be my friend. Because I don't believe men and women can truly be friends. And this is not the woman's fault. This is the guy's, at some point, the guy's going to fall for you. But you didn't even think for a second.
No, because he never actually behaved in a way that I would think he was into me.
So he just wanted to hang out with you.
Yes, and also, let's say on Thursday and Saturday I couldn't be there because I had other plans. He would still post stories with other girls.
Okay.
And he was always the same with everybody.
He was just a nice guy.
He was just a nice guy that was friendly with everyone. Everybody knew him. Like, he was welcomed in every single places we went to Montreal. Everybody knew him. So no, there was no red flags. And to be honest, was I opened to look at red flags? Not really. Very honestly, I was not aware of anything else but my own self and what I look like. And it's sad. And that also, I think, is a big problem nowadays, is that we're driven with the looks of everything. Like, your Instagram page has to be perfect. When you film yourself, like doing a video, you have to put a filter because otherwise we're going to see your pimple. Like, come on.
Yeah, you don't have to do that. But people think that way.
I know.
Because they want to portray themselves as being, you said it, perfect. And then everybody, what happens after? Everybody, it's a disease. Everybody sees, I see Melina on social media. Look how good, look at this life she has. I want that life too. Yeah. But with that life comes problems, and we don't see any of the struggles. No. We only see on everybody's social media, we see the perfect life.
Exactly.
And that's what people need to understand, right?
And even today, when you look at my Instagram and what I post, people probably think, oh my God, she's got it all now. Like, so she's doing so good. No, darling, like, I cry almost, not every day, but I cry often. not because I'm sad, just because it's hard. Shit is hard.
Absolutely. Life is hard.
Life is hard, and it's full of struggles, and I still have a lot of things that I have to work on in terms of not doing things for other people's happiness. Like, think always about me first and how I feel in those situations, and not always try to save everybody. I feel like and I don't know if that's because of my past and what I've been through, but I feel like you attract people that are like you without even wanting it. So I feel like all my past relationships that I had, like recently, they're all with people that have massive issues and had a big past and still have a lot to heal. And I took on that as a mission, thinking that I could help these people, but putting my own happiness on the side to help them. And like, major consequences came out of this, not like things that you can see, but in my head, like, it affected me so hard. And I decided to just pull back and let them go, because it just wasn't healthy for me, even though it broke my heart, because I thought, I know I can help them, but to what extent am I going to go, and how unhappy am I going to be for someone else's happiness? You know what I mean? We're deviating so much from the first subject.
No. And look, when you're doing, we're just talking. It's not an interview. I don't have questions.
Notes.
Every guest that comes in here is like, what are you going to ask? They'll ask, what are your questions? I go, I don't have questions. I mean, I'm prepared. I'm very aware of who you are, what happened to you and your story, and I want to get the truth out. Your book is called Sans Filtre, without...
I don't have a filter.
No filter, right?
No, that's one of my big problems too.
No, it's not a problem. It's great because sometimes it gets you into trouble.
It does.
Or it gets anybody. I have no filter. But I think people appreciate honesty and independent thinking, and that's what the Drive-By podcast is about, is to be free and talk about what you want. So, today you've removed yourself from that kind of influence, which was obviously bad influence. But going back to, so you're hanging out with this guy, older gentleman in the nightclubs. He's paying for you, not only you, bunch of other girls who are in your circle, drinks, I imagine designer gifts as well, stuff like that. Not really.
No,
mostly taking food and
dinners and bottles, whatnot.
And hanging out.
Yeah.
Drugs?
No.
No drugs?
No, I wasn't using.
Okay.
I'm still not, but I was never like a drug user.
Okay, so you never...
Except when I was in high school, and then I stopped after a year.
Okay.
And then he was someone that I would call whenever something would happen in my family, and vice versa. He would talk to me about his wife, and to me, he was a friend, a genuine friend.
So he was married?
I don't know if he was... I can't remember if he was married. I know he has... Or he had, I don't know anymore. He had someone in his life that wasn't in Canada. She was in another country, and he found it really hard to have like a long distance relationship. Is that true? I don't even know. Anyway, so we would talk about everything personal, every financial struggles or whatnot, and that's probably my fault for opening up too much with him. Maybe about.
So you told him about.
I was struggling, and like I wanted to, it was pissing me off that the girls were able to get themselves everything they wanted, and I was working 60 hours a week and couldn't even afford whatever I wanted, And then at some point, he introduced me to one of his friends. We were in a restaurant one night, and he introduced me to him, and then I became close to him as well. So we were like always the three of us with a bunch of other people. And I think it was I'm really struggling with like time frames because it's been so long. But I think a few months later, this second guy that I met, that was his friend, we were eating dinner at an Indian restaurant in Montreal, and he told me to come with him, and we sat down, and he's like, I might have something for you that could help you financially and blah, blah, blah. And some things happened in my family back then as well that they needed money for an issue. And he said, there's this trip that you could do, and told me that there was drugs involved, and it was about bringing it to another country. And I started to laugh, and I was like, are you fucking crazy? I would never.
Wait.
I was laughing because I thought he was joking. You know what I mean?
So wait, he comes right out and
but
says
he's a friend, mind you.
Yeah.
Like, we've had so many, to me, I was like, bro, never. And then he was like, all right, whatever. Like, if ever you change your mind, I have something. Like, it was such a small, it was never like no amount was ever talked about, never discussed an amount, never discussed which country, how, when, it was
how
just
it's going to be executed. But he basically told the truth. This is what we're looking at doing.
Yeah.
But you, in your mind, you're not thinking international.
Never.
Drug smuggling.
Never. Yeah. And I used to watch those shows with my mom, like Locked Up Abroad, and me and my mom used to not laugh at people, but we used to think like, what the hell were they thinking?
What's wrong with these people?
How? Yeah.
It's crazy how then that turns around and...
yeah, it's insane. And I think like from memory, it was beginning 2016.
Okay.
Like January or...
The beginning of the year 2016.
That he talked about it.
2016 being, I would imagine, the worst year, no doubt, of your life, right? Or what? No, or...
Honestly, no.
No.
Afterwards.
2017 and 18. We'll talk
19,
about
20,
that 21.
Yeah.
And, that's, but that worst...
I wouldn't say the worst.
It was the year the decision was made to do that, which got you into some of the worst years of your life.
Yeah. And I said no. And I started to date my ex in January as well. Oh, no. I started to date him in March.
Same guy you were dating when you were 17?
No.
Another ex?
New guy. Yeah.
New guy. Yeah.
So started to date this guy in 2017. I moved in with him in his house, and it was a very up and down relationship. I'm so bad at relationships, clearly. And I was talking about it to my friend, how like I was pissed off with his behavior and whatnot. And then he told me at some point, he's like, listen, if you need to like chill out and relax, I could fly you to Morocco and you can spend the week with my guy friends over there. They have a mansion or whatever. So I was like, okay. And he told me that I would get introduced to the people that were organizing the thing that his other friends spoke to me about in January. And he's like, they're just going to explain it to you. And if ever you change, like, he's like, I guess you're saying no because you don't know anything about it. But he's like, if you need, they can tell you more about it and you can.
So the boyfriend at the time was part of...
No. He's out. He didn't know anything, actually.
He didn't know anything?
No.
Okay. I'm just trying to understand. He wanted you to go there to spend time at this mansion where you would meet the executors. My friend,
yeah.
The friend of the plan.
Forget the boyfriend. The boyfriend is not in the plan at all.
Crazy. The story just keeps getting
I know. But like I said, I'm like leaving out a lot of details that in the book make sense. Like it's very well explained, and I talk a lot about like how I was feeling and what sort of emotions I was going through and in my head, and it helps you understand like where my head was at back then and why I was so careless about those decisions. So initially I said, I don't know if I'm gonna go, whatever. And then one day got into a big fight with my boyfriend, and I called my friend. I was like, you know what? I want to go to Morocco. I need a break. So I flew to Morocco, spent the whole week there, never spoke to anybody. Nobody ever spoke to me about nothing. We just drank and partied until 7 a.m. every day.
A lot of girls?
Few girls, but guys too. There was no like, not more girls than guys. It was pretty much 50-50.
But the girls were from Quebec, or
no. Some girls were all from the girls were all from there. I was pretty much the only one from Quebec that day.
You think that was it would become maybe a recruitment party, like where
I know it was. Part of it.
So basically, they were trying to figure out who we could convince to do this, maybe from the girls that were there.
I think,
and it was Isabelle there too.
No.
Okay.
No, and I think you could tell I was a very loyal friend. Like some situations happened in Montreal. Like I don't know, one of the friend that I had would get into an argument with another guy at a bar, and I was always defending him. You know what I mean? It's like I was very protective of my friends. So I think that's a good quality for a mule, I guess. they recognize that. So yeah, I spent the week in Morocco, and then I came back and life went on. And I think it's in July. Hang on, let me puzzle this back together. The cruise ship was leaving on the 7th of July, and 2 weeks before the departure of the cruise, the guy that spoke to me about that thing initially called me, and he's like, Melina, the cruise that's supposed to leave in July, there's one person that can't go anymore. So there was 5. Is that right? Or 7? Oh my God.
Well, according to I watched some documentary,
Yeah.
French documentary, and they said it was 6 people.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So 2 per room. Thank you.
Yes. And you were in the room. Okay, so first of all, the person that you were that was implicated in this was Isabelle
Yeah.
Legace.
Yeah.
Okay, and so you were in a room together.
Yeah.
2 other guys were in another room, and 2 other guys in another room.
Yeah, exactly.
On the
But initially-
Princess Cruise.
Yeah.
Okay.
But initially, I wasn't supposed to be there. So one of the guys that were on the cruise, a part of the 6 people, he couldn't go anymore. So they called me 2 weeks before, and they were like, "We really need you to go. Would you be able to?" And I was like, "Hang on, that's a 2-month cruise. I'm a manager for a jewelry store. Like, I can't just leave for 2 months." And he was like, "Well, if it's something you would consider, just look at what you could do and then let me know."
2-month cruise around the world.
It's 52 days.
52 days, literally starting in England, going across the ocean at some point, getting to the port of, I'm not going to mention
You
all
were
the ports.
doing like
New York, and
Ireland,
then,
New York, Boston, Bermuda. Like you would go down
through the
Chile,
Caribbean,
yeah,
and then South America,
Easter Island,
yeah, and then across the ocean, the Pacific.
Polynesia, New Zealand, and then Australia. Wild.
52 days. I
know.
believe the ticket price was $22,000 a ticket.
Yeah,
according to the
from what I remember.
investigative journalists, and these tickets were paid for the 6 people at some travel agency.
Yeah.
From what I understand, what I read about.
In cash.
So
I think
red flags going up all over the place in cash.
I didn't know that at the time.
Yeah, no, of course not. So for you, this is the trip of a lifetime. I mean, when are you going to get an opportunity
Why would
to
you
go
say
around
no,
the world,
right?
right? Exactly. And you're thinking, what could this possibly be? You're not thinking 95
I wasn't
kilos of
thinking.
cocaine. You're not thinking $60 million
and mind
street
you,
value.
no one ever talked about
Explain that.
quantity
Yeah.
ever. So, and that was probably one thing I should have inquired.
Looking back. Yeah. But even if it were
but we didn't really have
1
anything
kilo,
to do with we didn't have much implication in, like, we weren't supposed to touch anything. We were just there to make it look like we're all on vacation together.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
So none of the how many bags were there that they found?
I don't know.
You don't know.
In our suitcase, it was 23 kilos that we had.
In your suitcase?
In our suitcase,
Both your
in our
suitcases?
cabin. No, just one.
One suitcase
We
in the
had
cabin.
one
And you were
suitcase.
told, obviously it was locked. You were told, don't touch it. It was just there.
Yeah, pretty much.
No part of you and Isabelle, were you like nervous?
I was freaking out. What do you mean?
Well, this is what I'm trying to understand.
No,
Like,
I'm not.
for me,
I'm
I'd
not
be
made
freaking,
of rocks.
Yeah,
like,
I would be
I was
freaking out at that point.
But
Yeah.
especially because it wasn't like we weren't supposed to have anything in the room in the first place. Like, we were not supposed to touch it. We were not supposed to have anything. So the plans. So basically, we went around the world. I said yes to go. I took off my job. I was just like, I want to go.
What did you tell your parents?
I told my parents that my friend found this, how do you say, like, this big special on a cruise. Like, the more people there are, the less expensive it is. And he wanted to offer me some sort of bullshit that,
big special.
thanks to my parents, never believed me.
Wow.
But I was the most hard-headed person you would ever meet, and nothing you could tell me would make me change my mind. And today I am not. It depends. But today I worked on that a lot. And I should have listened to my mom and my dad, and I didn't. They knew I was bullshitting them. They knew it wasn't true, but what could they do? You know, they had no idea what it was. They just thought, there's no way someone's going to pay a cruise for you.
And not want something in return.
You know,
Yeah,
and
something,
which
at
makes
least.
so much sense.
Of course. Now it makes, in hindsight, you're like...
It makes so much sense. But yeah, and I said yes. I left my job and I went.
And how did you meet, or when did you meet Isabelle?
It was if I'm not wrong, it was 2 months before. Like, we knew each other.
From the
I saw
nightclubs?
her a few times, in the nightclubs, but we never like were friends. I didn't know her much. She was 28 at the time and I was 22. So we still had a few years difference. And she had her own group of friends. I had mine. So we basically got to know each other when we got on the cruise together.
The media, okay, so Legace Media, or what was formerly known as mainstream media, portrayed you both. You know, they called you. Okay, there were
Porn
many.
star?
Well, there were many headlines. There were as a matter of fact, the biggest one was the cocaine cuties, which hit international news.
I cannot stand it.
What's the other one I saw? They labeled Isabelle as a porn star, and you as an escort.
Yeah. Also because so this is basically, that was the hardest thing for me to deal with when I came back as well.
Was she a porn star?
No. She was never.
She was like doing maybe
Both of us were never porn stars or in the sex industry
doing that
at
stuff.
all.
Okay.
No.
Is it because you were hanging, like you said at the beginning of the podcast, you were hanging with people who were doing it?
Yeah.
So
when we received the brief of evidence, the police obviously in Canada were doing their own investigation, and they went through all the people that I was hanging out with, and they basically wrote, we think that she might be in either escort industry or have a pimp or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Which wasn't the case.
Never.
Okay.
And that's pretty much where it started. And I guess, like, as I mentioned, when I was in court, when I pleaded guilty, I called my friend in Montreal my sugar daddy, because that was our defense. And a sugar daddy can be a lot of things. You know what I mean? You don't have to be sexually interactive.
So I hear that the ones today, there's a lot of them not providing sex.
And even, you know, there's so many different definitions that you could use as to say someone's your sugar daddy. I said that because he would literally pay all my dinners and pay alcohol, and it's not necessarily, and even an escort, like if you actually look at the definition of an escort, it's not a sexual. Escorting someone is you're
tagging along.
Yeah. So
your arm candy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is what because we had to portray like my life back in Montreal for my defense, and this is the choice of words that we used, and that's what also followed me back here when I came back, and also during the whole investigation. And a lot of things that, you know, just saying that someone's a porn star, it's fucking wrong if you don't know for a fact that she is, because even though we don't have a criminal record here, we only have one in Australia. If Isabelle wants to find a job here, I don't think that everybody's going to want to hire a formal escort or a formal porn star. These are really big words, and it's not true. And it's fucked up that the media said all of that. And even Isabelle did a documentary, and in her documentary, it was a 3-part documentary, and they went back to Australia and they interviewed people that were on the cruise with us, and they interviewed a few channels. I can't remember which one it was. Like, they asked whoever was doing the interviews or whoever was talking about our story, they were like, why did you say all those things? And they were like, because that's why people listen to it and watch the show.
That's exactly why.
And it sucks.
It sucks.
And they said we milked it. Like, it was the perfect story. 2 young girls on a cruise ship around the world in bikinis and importing cocaine and all. Everyone's tweeting about it and blah, 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 saying cocaine,
it was a massive, cocaine
whatever.
Cuties,
like,
I saw cocaine cuties,
it was the opportunity
cocaine cowgirls, all this stuff.
Exactly.
Escorts.
Cowgirls. That's the one I hated.
That's another one, yeah. You're not even from Alberta, Calgary, or Texas, but now you're wearing a cowboy hat. But no, it was, look, having worked in the media, I know they want what's juicy. They want the juicy headline. Even doing a morning show, you know, we'd say it a certain way. How are you going to execute it? We'd come up with it, and they'd say, well, no, say it this way, because if you say it this way, it's juicier. So that's what media is going to do. So you weren't a porn star, you weren't an escort, you were hanging around in that milieu of people, and you were hanging with a man who technically was providing you with a lot of stuff, food mostly, and drinks, and in this case a trip. So it was a sugar daddy minus, you're saying, no sexual relationship.
Never, ever. Yeah. And little brackets, I don't hate the media. Still your job. Like, this is what you do, and they do have to get views and stuff, and I don't hate on anybody. And I mean, the book that I wrote is with
A media person.
yeah. So clearly I don't have anything against them. It's just that I think we just have to be mindful sometimes of what we read, because I know media won't change. There's nothing we can do about that.
No.
But if you're a reader and you read stories, like that's why we can't even see it anymore on social media. Anyway, you can't see on North City, Quebec, or like everything's blocked. But let's say it wasn't.
Yeah. This podcast is not blocked yet. That's why we're here. Isn't this great?
Let's say it wasn't. You always have to keep in mind that, you know, there's always two sides to a story. And I think that's why people, they appreciated us coming forward and telling our side of the story, because they realized that a lot of it was not what it was. And we were portrayed as these horrible people that were just thinking about themselves, which is true. Like there's a part of it is true. And it was really bad the way that I was thinking back then. And I never actually thought about the consequences. I never thought how much money my mom would have to pay for my lawyers, how much she would have to get out of her pocket just to come and see me. You know, it's all things that I never thought about. And we're still today, she's struggling with it. You know, it was a lot of money. And that's all things that I never thought about. And you know, it's one thing to not have a good reputation. It's one thing to lose your freedom. It's one thing to come back and have nothing. But it's something else when it affects people other than you.
Absolutely.
Probably even worse than what you know.
It broke their hearts for sure. Your
and it
parents,
broke mine,
and it
for
broke
real.
Your heart.
It really did. And I always feel like I owe them something, and I have to, not that I have to stop doing that. It's just my mom doesn't feel like I owe her anything. You know what I mean? And
she's your mom.
She's my mom.
Yeah. She loves you unconditionally, no matter what happens, even during the worst times of your life, especially.
Yeah.
And she was there for you.
She was there 100%.
The story is,
I don't want
tissues are there. Sorry, I stopped to get some tissues because I thought, I thought it's such an emotional story. Melina, I'm going to be honest. People were, you know, it's easy for late night comedians, crack jokes. I heard them all when they were going on. I felt, honestly, because I'm a compassionate person, I felt very bad for you, because I saw these two young, attractive girls, and what happened is awful. Yes, you made some horrible decisions, but you move on. You paid the price, hefty price, 5 years of your life in jail. But there's no doubt in my mind, after speaking to you, even watching some of the things online that you were on, mostly French podcasts. This is her first English podcast, by the way. Thank you so much. I love the fact that you chose to drive by first here to tell your story, your real story. But I felt horrible for you, because it could have happened. You know, I mentioned this to somebody, and they're like, well, it couldn't have happened to anybody. No, I believe it could have happened. This type of story does happen to normal, regular people from a good family, which is your story. It happens because you're wrong place, wrong time. Maybe you're in need of some financial help. Your family needs money, whatever the case is, and you do something, you think, whatever. And next thing you know, you're in jail for 5 years. So, okay, so you go to the port of, you go to England, and that's where the cruise ship.
It was Ireland. No, you're right. London.
In England, in London, England. That's where the Princess Cruise, luxurious cruise liner, that's where you start your voyage. Your 52 days. So when does it happen? When are you arrested? How does that happen? Were you on the cruise for how many days? 52 days, and then you arrive in Sydney. How did it happen?
I think we had a few more days to go, but we got arrested in Sydney.
Yes.
So we did like New Zealand and then Sydney, and we were supposed to do Sydney to Brisbane, if I'm not wrong, and that was another 2 or 3 days.
Okay, so this was day
-3.
-3. So this was day
like day 49. Yeah, whatever.
It's like an episode of Big Brother,
right? Same
it's
thing.
Day 49.
Yeah.
And you arrive in Sydney.
Yeah.
And you had no inclination as to what was about to happen. No.
I mean, I won't say I don't have any inclination, because I have a good sixth sense.
Yes.
And I felt.
She felt something.
Yes, because you know, during the whole trip, we didn't have anything in the cabin. It's only 2 days before Sydney that.
Back to episode 138 of the Drive-By podcast in just a second. But first, I want to tell you about the place in Montreal with their 5 locations around the island of Montreal to go to when you're thinking desserts, when you're thinking maybe you're getting ready for a big life celebration, a big birthday bash, you want a custom cake done. They've got all the themes. Basically, any theme you want, they can recreate with a cake. That's how good they are, and they've been doing this for a long time. It's Les Délices Lafrenière. Go to lesdeliceslafrenière.com or show up to any of their 5 locations in the Montreal area and create your custom cake. Desserts, when you're heading to somebody's house, you can never go empty-handed. Don't show up to somebody's house without bringing something. Go to Les Délices Lafrenière. Get hooked up with the lobster tails, cannoli, sweets, whatever it is you're looking for. They've got it all there and more. It's Les Délices Lafrenière.
Someone on the cruise came to us and said, we need to put the suitcase in your cabin because we're going to get off in Sydney. We're going to check out and come back in to grab the suitcase and get it out. And in my head, I'm like, buddy, once you check out, you check out. You can't come back in. You give back your cards and
there's no way to let you back in.
Nothing else. So I started to panic, but I didn't say anything because what can you do anyway? So I had a lot of anxiety and we just left the cabin for the whole day. And when we came back, the suitcase was under the bed and the cocaine was in it, obviously. We didn't open it. We just knew. And then we left to go to Sydney. So we were in the water for 2 days. And then Sydney morning, I woke up at around 5:30 because I wanted to see the sunrise. And I woke up and I went on the top deck of the boat, and I took a picture of the Sydney harbor. And I went back down. Isabelle was just getting out of the shower, and I said, do you want to go for breakfast before we head out? And she said yes. So she dressed up and we went upstairs, got breakfast, and we're sitting down. She's sitting like in front of me, just like you right now. And behind her was the whole buffet, like all the tables and the food and everything. And I was eating my English muffin, and then at some point I just raised my eyes and I saw like a bunch of officers dressed in navy blue, and it was written AFP, and they were all looking at me, walking towards me, and I was like, fuck, that's it. And then they came to the table, and my heart was like, honestly, I thought I was gonna like lose concert. I was not well, and it's like I was seeing my whole life flashing in front of my eyes, and I didn't know. It's so rare that I get emotional because I spoke about this so many times. I don't know why with you. Emotional with me? Yeah, I could see my life flash by, and I didn't know. You know, the unknown is very scary, especially that kind of unknown. Like, it's, you know, you did something wrong, and it's not like, I'm not downgrading someone that's gonna drink and drive, but I mean, if you drink and you get arrested, you pretty much know what's waiting for you. You're going to lose your license. You're going to have a thing coming. You know? I had no clue. So they asked us for the boat cards and identity cards and everything. We gave it to them. They said, yep, that's them. Took us by the arm, and we went down all the stairs, all the way down. We were on the first floor of the cruise. And then there was this long corridor with our room at the end of the corridor was our room on the left side. So we're walking and I'm seeing dogs. So I was like, great, we're not getting out of this. There's no way. And they just told us to wait.
Were you speaking with Isabelle at that point?
No, we said nothing.
You didn't say anything?
No. I don't think we were in a space to talk anyway.
Were you looking at each other?
No.
Nothing?
No, I was looking down. Like, can you be more ashamed? I don't think so. So yeah, and we walked down the corridor, and then the dogs were there, and they told us that they were going to search the room and asked us if we had anything to declare, and we said no. And they searched, and then you hear good boy, and then that's when they found it.
They asked you pretty much if you had anything to declare, as in,
do you have anything to declare?
Do you have drugs? You know? And do you think, had you at that point, so you said no.
I said no.
Hoping.
She said no.
But did any part of you think for a second, maybe I should say yes here?
No.
No.
Hell no.
No, hell no. But you know, there's a dog. They're going to find it.
I know.
It's there.
Yeah.
Unless they didn't put the drugs in there, but you knew the drugs were in there. So there was
I
no...
mean,
yeah.
did we know for a fact?
Would that have changed anything? No. If you would have said yes, like if you were
It's
cooperating...
incriminating. You're incriminating yourself even more.
Right. Yeah,
You know?
exactly.
So yeah, and they searched it, and then they read us.
So basically, hang on. I'm trying to understand this. So you thought to yourself, obviously they know you have drugs in there, but you thought to yourself, maybe they were planted there and you could go with, we don't know anything about this. That's the angle you were taking, correct? From the start?
Well, yeah. Just like anyone that's getting caught
doing something
wrong, you deny.
Sorry, I don't know. You deny, exactly. I was like, no,
Deny,
I didn't do this.
deny. So,
thinking,
we denied.
Yeah, you denied. I get it.
We
Yeah.
always deny.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
So yeah, and then they read us our rights, and I was crying like a baby, and they handcuffed us and walked us in front of everybody, basically, and we got out in Sydney.
And they said, if you want to get a lawyer, now's a good time. Yeah, absolutely. You didn't speak to them before getting your lawyer. Never.
No,
you
I
watched,
was crying.
And you watched enough of
talk.
those. Yeah, and you watched enough of those shows to know that speaking without a lawyer just gets you in a whole bunch of
exactly
danger.
And and they drove us to the police station and interview, and then you just say no comment the whole time, and they keep you there for hours hoping that you're gonna crack. And I wasn't sleeping, but I had my head in my arms and crying. I just couldn't stop crying. And then they get you downstairs, you go in a cell for another I don't know how many hours. Just everything is so long. And at some point they moved us to the jail. And
you had never been in jail,
not even
for 24
not
hours.
Even police station. Like
never in a police car. Nothing.
Nope, never in my life. You go all in for the first one and never
all
again. Don't do that, anybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's when my happy years started, when I got to jail, and it was.
But getting back to the police station, at that point you're granted a lawyer over there, or do you have to work on that right away?
And it's not the time to get a lawyer. Like when I was in the interview room, I said, "Can I speak to a lawyer?" And he's like, "Yeah." So he gave me the phone, and the lawyer was like, "What are you there for?" And I told him, and he's like, "Don't."
Where was the lawyer?
On the phone.
But
it's they call it
legal aid. Legal aid, exactly.
Yeah,
in Australia.
Legal aid, lawyer.
Don't say anything.
He just said, "Do not say anything."
Yeah.
So I was
and you
like,
hadn't said anything?
No.
Okay.
No. And so I hung up, and at the beginning the police woman was like super nice to me, and at the end she was pissed off because she was like, "You're gonna ruin your life," and I was like, "I don't care, I'm not saying anything, like you're wasting your time, I'm not gonna talk about anything." And I was like, even if I wanted to, I know nothing anyway. So, and it's true, like I didn't know enough. Even if I wanted to cooperate, I didn't really have anything to say. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So why put yourself in a worse situation?
Absolutely.
And people are so they have different opinion on that, because some of them think that I'm protecting these people by not saying anything, but I'm protecting myself and my family. You know what I mean?
First,
it's not because I think if something needs to happen to them, it's not going to be because of me. It's just going to be, that's, the journey that they have to go through. That's going to happen anyway, without me having to put myself in a dangerous place, you know? So
you were both arrested, you and Isabelle, and one other person, if I'm not mistaken, which was the gentleman, right?
No, we didn't know that. We didn't know him at all.
But one of the guys
one of my
was
friends?
arrested. Yeah.
Yeah, both of them weren't on the cruise.
But there was a man that was arrested with you. So
right.
that man was part of the 6
Yeah.
mules or whatever the case is. He was arrested.
Yeah.
You and Isabelle both got 5 years?
No, Isabelle got 4 years, 3 months. I think he got the same, and I was the last one to get out.
Okay, and you were the last one, you got 5 years.
Yeah.
But wasn't your sentence 8 years originally? And then
the way it works is it's the same as in Canada. So you're going to get a full sentence.
And then
like the bottom sentence is the time that you have to spend in jail, and the top sentence is the time that you have to do in on parole. But because I'm not from Australia, once I'm released to do my top sentence, I don't have a visa. I'm not a citizen, so I don't do the parole.
Right.
So the bottom sentence was the time I did in jail, and the rest. But in saying that, I'm still on parole, because if I wanted to go back to Australia, let's say next week, I can, but I have to report.
Oh, you have to report.
I'm on parole.
In Australia?
Yeah.
How long do you have to report in Australia
I think it was 3.5 years.
Okay. Does any part of you ever want to go back to Australia? No, I mean,
No.
I don't care. At that point, I would be like, the hell with Australia.
I think there's a lot of other places I could go.
Exactly.
Before
you had your 5 years at your all-inclusive in Australia, and it wasn't a fun all-inclusive, let me tell you. All right, so you get arrested, you speak to the lawyer. How long after all that? So then when you finally have the lawyer, where's the lawyer from? When you have the lawyer in...
My lawyer?
Yes, your actual lawyer now that defends you in court.
Yeah.
When you get the legit lawyer that's going to be with you all the way. Is from Australia?
No. Yeah, she was an Australian lawyer.
Okay.
So my mom, 2 weeks after I got arrested, her and my uncle flew to Australia to come and see me.
That must have been an emotional...
That was the hardest, truly the hardest part, I think. Not getting arrested, not getting out, not seeing my mom the first time, and like damn, you're making me cry today, Frank.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to. I think
I know you don't.
I think your
don't
story,
know why I'm so emotional.
You wrote the books sans filtre, no filter, but I think the reason why you're getting emotional and you're crying is because we're actually talking about what happened from your perspective. It's your story. It's what happened. It's not what the media is saying, what some documentary is saying. It's your story, and you're telling it, and that's why you're getting emotional. And I feel for you, because I could see the face. I put myself in the other person's shoes all the time. I could see my mom showing up in Australia, and I would immediately start crying. Yeah. Because what have I done? And I've disappointed
the worst feeling.
The person that means the most to me, I would imagine.
Yeah. And she was just sitting there. She was shaking so bad, and I took her in my arms, and we were both sobbing. Like, even the officers had teared up. Because everybody knew about the story, you know what I mean? It was everywhere.
Yeah.
And she kept asking me if I was okay, like, was I eating? Were people taking care of me? And she was so worried. Like, I've never seen my mom so worried and so stressed. And it was, honestly, it's like disappointing your parents is like another level. It hits different. It's just... Yeah. So then we talked, and she was staying for a week with and thank God my uncle was there. I don't know how she would have done it. So
her brother, obviously.
No, it was her sister's boyfriend.
Right.
But they were together for many years.
Yes.
So basically, he was part of the family. But so they went and saw a few lawyers in Australia, and they felt like most of them were there only because it was a high-profile case there, and it would bring them popularity, and which is
compensation,
obviously. And then they met my lawyer at a cafe. Her name was Shayana, and when she saw my mom, she gave her the biggest hug, and she sat next to my mom, and she was like, had her hand on my mom's hand the whole time. And they talked, and my mom said, like, I just fell in love with her. I knew she was gonna be your lawyer. And we still talk today. Like, we're still FaceTiming. We stayed really good friends, and she was there from the beginning to the end. Even when my mom ran out of money, she applied, because she was a private lawyer, so we were paying for her at the beginning. And then when my mom was not able to pay anymore, she asked legal aid to pay the grant. So they were giving her salary, which was way less than what she usually makes.
So you felt like, because when you watch a lot of these shows on television, you hear about that. The lawyer really, at some point, they've made money, they've done well, and they know they're getting a lot of publicity and fame with one of these, this case being one of the biggest internationally that's come out in a long time, around that time. And so she's also, they do it pro bono, right? Or a lot of them, or they work within your means. So you felt she really, obviously, was she a parent? Did she have a...
She felt pregnant like a few months after.
So like, exactly.
She had that mommy, and
instinct,
she was just looking at my mom, and she told me afterwards, she's like, your mom was so, like, she was distressed. Like, I've rarely seen you can tell she loves you, and like I don't want to. She's like, I don't care about the money at this point. I just want you to get the best result that you can. And she stuck to us like it's insane. I'll always be super grateful for this woman because she changed the whole thing. I don't know if we would have got that good of a result if it wasn't her. Like she did everything for us. So that really helped my mom to feel more confident and not stress anymore, stress less, because she knew I was in good hands. And then she went back home after a week, and that was also a very hard moment because I didn't know when I was going to see her again. And that's it. I did my whole time, and there's so much that happened in jail as well. Like, but we could talk about it for hours.
Well, we have hours. But what I'd like to know is first of all, how long after you were arrested did it go to the trial?
I pled guilty. It took about a year and a half, almost 2 years.
At any point, did you want to, when you were speaking to your lawyer, did you want to plead innocent, obviously?
Of course,
and then the
we
lawyer
did at the
said,
beginning.
here's the deal. You're not getting off here.
Yeah.
And they talked to you from my years of watching the show.
Yeah.
So not that I'm...
No, we did plead not guilty at the beginning because they didn't really have anything as far as evidence on me.
Mm-hmm.
And that divided a lot me and Isabelle as well, which is understandable. And that's something that
She had her own lawyer.
She had her own lawyer.
Okay.
She pled guilty from the get-go. And we talked about it, and we're in good terms today, but that was like a very big disagreement that we had for a long time. We didn't really speak for a long time. We spoke when I came back after my podcast with Etienne Boulay. And today we're good. We're not friends, but we're in good terms, and I appreciate the conversations that we had. And it kind of brought us closure on all of that, because that was like pretty much the only thing that was still up in the air. We didn't really know.
So your lawyer pretty much tells you your best shot at getting out here is to plead guilty. And a trial.
Yeah, so we stayed not guilty for a long time. And then when it was about a week before the trial started, and the other man that got arrested with us, he also pled not guilty. And then both of us were going to trial together because it was the same case. And a week before trial, my lawyer called me and she said, bad idea. And I'm not going to mention why, but there was just no way that we would win the trial at this point.
So if you don't win the trial, what are you looking at?
A lot more fucking time than I did.
Double the time?
I don't even remember, but they have to go with like the books.
Right. So the
amount of drugs equal that amount of years.
Yeah,
and she was like, Melina, you do not want to risk it.
Yeah.
And Isabelle was already sentenced, and she said, you're going to have to get comparative sentence to her because you're the co-accused and it's the same amount, and you're going to get more time obviously because you pled guilty later, and you pled guilty a week before a trial, which is cost of money to
So you got what, an extra 6 months?
It's a lot less.
It wasn't 6 months more?
I had, I can't remember now.
But you spent was it 5 years to the day or
4
close
years,
to
9 months?
Okay, so almost just under 5 years.
Yeah. So
messed up, man. That's crazy. 5 years.
Yeah, and then I pled guilty, and we went to court, and I got my sentence, and I was pretty happy with it because I thought I was going to do at least 6. That's what my lawyer told me. So we were really happy with the result. And then from the day that when you're going home, I feel like time, it doesn't go faster, but it's not as painful because now when.
What date did you get out of jail?
27th of May, 2021.
Which has become a significant day. It's at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
It's an anniversary, a big anniversary. That's the day you were free.
It is.
When you heard, I can just imagine, you're in the court. Was the court, did it have an audience? Did it have a lot of people?
Sure. It was
your mom and uncle were?
My mom couldn't be there.
Okay. But the media, this was massive. Yeah, I saw some of the footage. So you're there, and what's going through your mind when the judge is reading the verdict? Any part of you think, like, what's going through your mind?
I was shaking.
And your lawyer was holding your hand?
No, I was alone in a box.
You were alone? Okay, wait, so in Australia.
So you're like on the side, and let's say I'm sitting here, Yeah, there's a plexi. You're sitting here, and the judge is like up there, and then you have the audience here. My lawyer was like maybe 2-3 meters away from me, but she wasn't with me.
Right, but usually they do that with criminals and criminal. Well, I guess technically they viewed you as a criminal, but this was happening during COVID.
Yeah.
So is that why you're in it? Because I know Australia was in.
It wasn't like completely blocked.
Okay. But you were
afterwards,
away.
when I got sentenced, my lawyer came to see me, and I was able to hug her.
Okay, so you were on, but you were by yourself.
I was by myself.
When the judge was reading the verdict.
Yeah, and you don't understand anything. They just keep blah 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 for like an hour.
Yeah, and then
it's like, can you just tell me 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 20? Like, I just want to hear the number.
Yeah, and you just want to hear it, and that's the last thing you hear. And
I know.
You hear the
and
words.
Then she said, and I couldn't really understand what because I mean, Australian accent is beautiful, but you don't understand much when you come from Canada.
Yeah, and
very special accent.
And your first language,
was
la langue
French.
maternelle is French,
Yeah.
and I imagine your English is excellent, by the way, and I imagine your English got better
I lost
in
a
jail.
little bit of my English because now it's been 2 years.
Okay, but it's
back.
very good. Your grammar's excellent. Everything is good, but you learned all that mostly in Australia.
Pretty much all of it.
So when you're there, you're speaking English, broken English, right?
I mean, I knew how to speak English, but only like in a niche because I was working for the jewelry store. So when you would speak English, it would always be the same words. You know what I
exactly.
mean? Like I wasn't having conversations about different subjects.
Yeah. Now look at you. I mean, it's amazing.
It's one good thing, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I got, and she was reading and reading and reading. And at some point I just heard 8.5 years and I was like, what? And then I looked at my lawyer and she's like, she just did this. And I was like, okay. And she kept reading and then she said, whatever, 4 years, 9 months, and then 3.5 months on parole. And I was like, I wasn't sure if I heard right. And then I looked at her and my lawyer looked at me and she had no emotion on her face. And you just you can't show that if you're happy. And then the judge got up and she just left and she looked at me before she left and like had a little smile. And then she left and my lawyer came to see me and she's like, are you happy? And I'm like, I don't even know what she said. And she's like, he got 4 years, 9 months. And I started to cry and we hugged each other.
Yeah.
And then I was able to go back to the jail a few hours later. And I called my mom the next day.
So wait, and I have to always stop you because I want to paint, especially if somebody is just listening to this and they don't see Melina's face here. It's on YouTube as well, but obviously if you're listening on Spotify and Apple, you don't get to see your face and your reactions. You can hear it though, because audio is theater of the mind. But we want to paint a picture of, so you're guilty, you walk out, they handcuff you.
Yeah,
okay,
always.
and then now they bring you back to the jail where you've been housed for how many months prior to the
It was almost
trial?
2 years before I pled guilty and got my sentence.
So you were already in for 2 years. So that counts.
It counts, thankfully. Yeah.
Oh man, if that would have, okay, so
no.
obviously that counts.
Yeah.
And now you go back to the jail. So now I want to, okay, so you've been spending 2 years in jail anyway. So let's now rewind to day one when you went into the jail.
Yeah.
And you walk into the jail. You've never been in a jail before. You've only seen it in movies and these shows that you watch, these crime shows that you watch. I want to know the feeling of walking in for the first time and knowing this will be your home for a while. What's going on in your mind?
I mean, it was hard because you always have an image in your head of what jail is like because of movies or shows that you've watched or whatnot. And it kind of looks like it, to be honest.
It's Australia, but it's not.
It's not like American jails where it's like just cells, like blocks of cells and tables and
it's more refined.
More like little buildings.
Cubicles or buildings? Okay.
Yeah, it's buildings with cells in it. And when we got out of the truck, we still had our handcuffs, but everybody knew who we were because it was everywhere on TV. So we got off the truck.
You and Isabelle.
Yeah, together. And then as soon as
women's jail, obviously.
Women's jail, yes. And as soon as we got in, the guard that was sitting at reception was like, "Oh, princess, what did he say? Cocaine princess." He said that out loud. And then there were girls in a cell on our right, and the cell was like a plexi, and they were banging so hard, and they were like, fresh meat, and I was like, oh my god, it's just like in the movies. We're gonna get, like, I thought we were gonna get
molested,
raped and whatever, which thankfully it didn't happen. But yeah, it was very scary. I was really scared. And
it housed how many inmates?
That particular jail was 372, if I remember right. So yeah, and then we got in and they registered us, made a mistake in my last name, and became Roberge.
So all of a sudden you're Italian.
So everybody was
whatever
calling
Roberge
me
is.
Roberge.
Yeah. Which is actually, in a
Fine.
way,
I was
you
like,
let it go.
maybe.
Like, maybe one day when I get out, these people can't find me.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that didn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we got in and they took us, it took a few hours, but it finally took us to the first cell that we were going to. We walked outside and then they called it induction. So it's like this little building with maybe 30 or 40 cells there, and the guard that was walking me down this corridor with like cells on each side, the girls were screaming and they were telling you like whatever, just
mean things, mean girls. Yeah. The same way men would yell at each other, like, I'm going to kill you and stuff like
exactly.
that. What you see in the movies is exactly what happens.
Exactly the same.
You must be terrified of this.
I was really scared, to be honest. Like,
what's going to happen here?
Yeah. And then she took me to that particular cell and she looked at, because there was always a picture of like who's inside. And she looked at the girl and she looked at me. She's like, good luck. And she opened the door.
Wait, you're sharing a cell with somebody?
I'm sharing a cell with this girl that I don't know. I've never met in my life. I speak half English. And I'm a Caucasian 22-year-old female with green eyes and no drug issues. You know what I mean? Like, I looked like a baby. And I got in the cell and there was like this table that was fixed on the wall. And she was sitting under the table trying to braid her hair. But you could tell like she was coming off some drugs or whatever.
Because you still get drugs in jail, obviously.
Yeah.
Everything?
I think so. I mean, I'd never used, but I know there was a lot of there was a lot of drugs going around. And she didn't say hi to me. So I sat down on the bed next to her, and at some point she asked me where I was from, and there was no TV, so like she didn't know who I was just yet. And then we started to talk, and she was fairly nice with me. At the beginning she was a bit hesitant, but afterwards she was like, oh my god, you're so young to be here, why? And she kept asking me all those questions, and I was like, I can't tell you anything, I'm sorry.
Where was she from?
Australia.
Younger as well?
She was pretty much my age, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, or maybe like a little bit older, but not much.
And she was in for how many years?
Not long.
Okay.
There's a lot of in and outs over there.
So she wasn't there for a long time?
No. And then finally we went to bed, and they never turned off the lights. That's the one thing that was like, I was so annoyed.
The lights were always on.
There's a camera and a light just fixing you the whole night.
So you really have zero privacy. There's a camera.
No, not at all. And the toilet is there. You know, you have to
sink and
do
toilet.
your business in front of the other one. But that's not the worst part. I mean, today I have no issues with
somebody.
Nope, no problem.
One day when you get married, or maybe you're living with somebody right now, I don't know, but
no, I don't.
You know, it's I always find it awkward. I've been with Steph for 17 years, and it's still awkward. Like sometimes she makes an announcement and I make an announcement. Okay, I'm going to the bathroom. Not our, you know, the one in our bedroom. Not that one. You go to the other one, right?
Oh my God.
It's like, and then sometimes she's walked in on me, or I've walked in on her, and she's like, get out, because it's uncomfortable, right? So can you imagine 4 years and 9 months of doing your number 1 and 2, especially the 2 and more, and the 3, who knows? And you're doing all that stuff in a room with somebody else, and it's constant strangers. And how many inmates shared with you over the years? A lot.
I can't even tell you.
But they wouldn't put you. Did you ever request going in with Isabelle? No, you didn't want to be in.
No, we really separated. Like at the beginning we were talking, and then she started to hang around other girls, and I had my own gang. I had my own people group. And that was it. But like I said, we weren't really on good terms because of my decisions.
You were mad.
No, she was mad at me.
She was mad at you.
Which is understandable.
Okay.
Like, honestly, I do understand her.
Yeah.
but at the same time, I was so scared back then. And my lawyer just told me, she's pleading guilty and you're pleading not guilty. And it's important that you don't tell her anything. Like, you don't know what people will do if they're mad at you, you know. And she kind of scared me on some levels. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to keep everything to myself. And she took it as I was trying to hide things from her. You know, it's just like a lot of misunderstanding.
Which is understandable. Considering the predicament
that's why
you're both in.
I'm not mad at her, and I don't think I think we are in good terms today, and the page is turned, which is important to me. But yeah, so no, I don't know how many cellies I had. I had a lot of them.
How many hours a day did you get to spend? Or first of all, we'll do the math quickly. How many inside the cell and how many
2.
outside with the community?
So 2 per cell, normally 2 or 3.
2 people?
Yeah.
But I mean, how many hours would you spend in confinement? And then how many just in freedom? In general,
Normally,
what do they call it? General population?
Yeah, pretty much. Let go.
Let go. This is where you let go.
You're locked in or
Yeah.
let go. From what I remember, it was from 3:30 in the afternoon that they would lock you in your cell until 8:30 in the morning.
That's a long
It's a
period
long
of time.
time.
How big is the cell?
Pretty much from like your window, maybe this square.
This square right here, so maybe
Like there's a bunk bed, a toilet,
Yeah.
a sink, and a little
so
table.
10 by 10, maybe like a 12
Yeah.
by 12, something like that.
Yeah, it's not
Okay.
not huge, but it's
Not
enough
big.
for 2.
And then when you go out into the general let go, there's a whole bunch of other shit happening out there, and the cliques, right? And there's some women, I'm sure.
I mean, it's not necessarily like in the movies. Like there's no big groups of Latinas and big groups of
Okay.
Asians and everybody's like in a war. It's not like
It
that.
wasn't like
it's
that.
just like people do their own thing, you
Okay.
know.
But,
there
I
was
mean-
often fights
Okay, there
that
are
you
fights.
wouldn't see
Yeah.
necessarily, but you would hear it in
Okay.
like other buildings.
You stayed away from any of that stuff. Never got into a fight, or did it happen that somebody came after you, or
It happened once.
okay, somebody came after you, or you maybe
Yeah,
went after
we're
them?
not gonna go
All right.
too much into details, but yeah, it was. But the fights in the jail would happen very often, and often you would get locked in because there was a fight. So
And you're in a jail, you know, it's a women's jail, obviously.
Yeah.
And it's, I would imagine that just like the real world, there's going to be women who are interested in you because you're a
Yeah, for
pretty
sure.
young girl. So then you have that to deal with.
Yeah.
The same way you would have to deal with men at nightclubs
Yep.
and restaurants and all that. You have to deal with that. So that, I mean, it's not a place where you're not on Tinder there
No.
swiping left and right. You're in a jail. And so that can't be fun. Having to maneuver
I mean-
that's not where you're going to find your life mate, even if you are interested.
yeah, I mean, at the beginning for sure, I wasn't in the mindset to date anybody. I just wasn't there at all. My head was not. I wasn't even looking. You know what I mean? Even if you could show me the hottest girl, I wouldn't. I just wasn't well. I was very depressed, very, very anxious all the time. Up until I got sentenced. After I got my sentence, like things calmed down a little bit in my head. And I was able to just go through my days. But no, at the beginning, I just hated it. I hated everybody that was coming to tell me I was whatever, pretty hot bitch.
Yeah. And I'm sure you're hearing it a lot, right? Every day.
Yeah. I mean, at the beginning, it was worse. Afterwards, people know who you are. You know, it's not going to happen every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not Miss America either. So I just think that every new girl that was coming in, there was always comments about that person and then it would fade away.
Mm-hmm.
But after I got my sentence, so it was about 2 years in that I was in jail. I met this girl from Brazil. Her name was Renata, and I talk about her in the book as well. And we started to talk a lot, and she was there for the same reason as me. She imported drugs, but it was on a plane. And we got very close because I think we could relate on a lot of things as well. Like, she didn't have any family in Australia. She was there for a few years as well. And I was always bisexual my whole life.
Oh, okay.
So it's not
Yeah.
like a get in jail type of
Yeah,
thing.
you didn't become
No.
bisexual in jail. You were.
No,
So
I was. I just
yeah.
never was in a serious relationship with a girl.
Yeah, but is that something? I mean, you would imagine you keep
A lot
you
of
keep
girls do that.
A lot of girls do
A
that.
lot
yeah.
of girls are straight outside,
and then they
and
become.
they come in
Yeah,
jail.
well-
They get with girls and they go out and back with their husbands.
Yeah,
Like
which is what I imagine.
Which is what people thought of me.
Yeah, but you were a bi to start with. When you ended up in jail, you started a romantic relationship with her for how many years?
2 years.
Okay, you still speak to her?
Yeah, we do. She's
Nice.
in a relationship now in Brazil.
Okay. With a girl?
woman.
Okay.
Yeah, she was lesbian.
Okay,
Like
she was
all her life. She's
okay.
never been with a guy.
Okay.
And we separated because it was her time to go home, and we weren't gonna continue the relationship when I still had 14 months to go. So it was just stupid. And we did meet in real life, and I don't know that it would have worked out in real life. I just think like at the end of the day, we really did love each other deeply, but it was also comforting to have someone that understood your feelings and how tough it was. It was so tough. Honestly, some days I wanted to give up so bad. I was like, I don't even know why I keep going, and she was there to like bring me back and say, Melina, like your family is waiting for you. It's your mistake. It's not your mom's mistake. Your mom shouldn't have to go through what she's going through right now. And on top of that, live with the fact that her daughter didn't want to be here anymore. Like, come on. So she was like really harsh on me, but that's exactly what I needed. So she went home, and I did the rest of my time, and I got out, and I was in a relationship with a guy for 1.5 years, and then we ended up the relationship, and since that relationship I haven't dated any other men.
So only women.
Only women.
And so you were in a relationship with a guy who did you have a past with? No. You met him, and was he familiar with who you?
He knew everything.
He knew the whole story, and he was okay with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he was like a very, very, very good person, like amazing. He was literally the perfect guy on paper. Like, it's just me. I'm special.
But you're single now?
I'm single now.
Okay.
But yeah, I just I don't know, after him, I think I never actually got to experience fully my sexuality with women, and that's something that I wanted to do. And now I don't necessarily have a preference, but I think I'm more inclined towards women than men.
And do you
from
think
my observation?
And do you think that has anything to do with the fact that you spent that time and you were around women, only women, for almost 5 years?
No, I don't think so.
No.
I just think that before jail, I didn't think I would be able to be in a relationship with a woman, just because I am a woman, but I'm not, like, how can I say? I don't have a lot of girlfriends because I feel like women are inclined into gossiping, and it's just a lot of things that doesn't really click with me. And I thought it's going to be a shit show if I'm in a relationship with a girl, you know what I mean? Like, already hormonal on my own, dealing with someone else. I don't know, but it's
Two girls.
I mean, it's not even, you can't really compare. It's different, but.
Your mom was aware of your sexuality all the time before?
My mom knew that my mom knew I was open,
okay.
But it's not something that we necessarily discussed before.
It's not something you necessarily
And when I told her with Renata, she was happy for us. Like, she didn't, and my dad, they never actually said anything. And that's one thing I'm so lucky, because I know some other, like, I hear horror stories with parents that are like, I don't accept it. And, you know, my mom's like, as long as you're happy.
Your mom came to visit you in jail
5 times
throughout the course of 5 years. So maybe about once a year?
I think 1 year she came twice.
Okay. And how long so she would come for how long?
A week or 2. From what I remember, it was like, normally it was a week, because she knew no one.
And she gets a place near the jail?
Yeah, she would get either Airbnb or hotel, and it was close to the jail, and she would come. We had extended visits, so it was from morning to afternoon. She had like a lunch break, but we could see each other all day. So you can imagine, like... Privately. I mean, privately. Well, it's tables.
There's a guard. Oh, yeah, right.
There's other people, but we speak French. Nobody understands.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, so we could literally talk about anything. But you can imagine, like, 5 days a week where you see your mom almost 5 or 6 hours a day. The amount of things that we talked about, like, there's nothing my mom doesn't know about me. You know, she became my best friend pretty much even today. I don't think it's a relationship I would have ever had with her if this didn't happen. I know that for a fact. But yeah, I was lucky. I was so lucky to have my mom.
She looks, I've seen her on a podcast, French podcast with you. She looks like a very sweet lady that had to go through.
She forgets herself too much though, but she's very sweet.
Moms always seem to do that. My mom puts my sister and I first all the time. She forgets, she would literally, when they say the person would give their shirt off their back for you.
She did. She freaking did. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But I think it's important for her not to forget about herself. And I don't think she necessarily, I think her whole life, she pretty much did it for her kids, And even me, like when I was younger, one of the reasons why I did that trip was because I did not know my capacities in anything. Yes, I was working. Yes, I was a manager for a jewelry store. Yes, I know I was skilled in managing, obviously, and I was good with people. But I didn't have any faith in myself, and I didn't think that I was able to do things. And like, if someone would give me an opportunity, I would always say no, because I was like, I don't know how to do that. Well, everything that you know how to do today is because you actually tried to do it and you noticed that you were able to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing that I think we need to do more, is stop saying no to opportunities because we're scared. And I'm not saying criminal opportunities like I did, because if it doesn't align with your values, you should never do it. And that clearly didn't align with mine. But I think it's just like, we don't trust ourselves enough, And since I started saying yes, like with you today, we talked about a bunch of things earlier that could potentially become something.
Yeah.
And if I would have said no because I've never done it, then who knows where I could be next year,
Yeah, you're more open-minded, I guess.
I'm so open-minded. And I'm like, so what if I don't know how to do it? My whole career as a hairdresser is taking chances and risks, because I've never, ever been to school. Never.
You finished high school?
I finished high school.
And that's it?
But in terms of hairdressing, I don't have any diploma, certificate.
Okay. You learned it on your own?
I learned it all on my own.
Were you doing it in jail?
Except extensions, but cutting, coloring, everything. I don't have
balayage?
any.
What's that called?
Balayage. It's my boss that showed me once, and then since then they're just like, if I have questions, I'm gonna go and see them. But I have to trust myself, And that's one thing that people struggle, is they don't trust themselves to be able to do things. And that's one thing that my mom is lacking. Is she, I feel like before I was the person that was lacking trust in myself, and now I have so much that now she relies on me a lot to help her.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that I don't want to help her. Like, my mom started a new business not long ago. But she didn't do any research in what is it to start a business? What do you need to do? What's your plan? What's the food cost? She didn't know any of it. She just left her job that she was there for 30 years because she just couldn't do anymore. And it's understandable, to start something else, but she had nothing, like no foundation. And I feel like she relies on me a lot to help her, and I do help her, but I know she relies on me because she doesn't trust herself and she doesn't think she's capable of doing all of it on her own. I know she can. So I'm a bitch sometimes, and I'm like, Mom, you're not doing it in the right way. Just go do your research and I'm going to help you afterwards. It's not my business, it's yours. So I am a bitch sometimes. But it's also because I learned the hard way how to do things and how to make good decisions, and what happens if you don't make good decisions or if you don't think about it enough. And that's what I want her to understand as well. And I think, to be honest, like, I'm not telling people to import drugs in another country and do 5 years of jail to learn anything.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, if you always do what makes you feel and makes you stay in your comfort zone, you're not going to accomplish much. You have to get out of it and be uncomfortable in doing things. And as long as you don't do anything criminal, if we stay like in the legal side of things, saying yes to opportunities is actually going to make you come out of your shell and try and at least like fake it till you make it. But I freaking faked it. My whole career as a hairdresser was faking it, faking the fact that I was good at cutting hair. Like, now I'm good, but I'm not perfect. But that's how I made it. And today I have amazing clients, and I work in a very highly respected salon in Montreal, and I never thought 1 minute that I would be there today, like, ever.
Yeah. And I have a friend of mine who's a stylist, and she's now overseas. She's a big stylist. You probably know Maggie Seman.
Yes.
You know who Maggie is?
Is that your friend?
There's a friend of mine,
Oh my
yes.
God.
I've invited her to come on the podcast to talk, but then I said, well, you know,
Maybe I can co-host if she comes.
yeah, exactly. I think maybe you should just do the podcast, but because we're going to talk about hair, but there's so much more to talk about with her because of the people that she works with in overseas in
for sure.
Dubai. She's in Dubai doing
Right.
things, and then she's at New York Fashion Week, and then she's doing hair for these big personalities who are on TV shows that you even see on Netflix
Wow.
and all that. Everything she always told me about she was going to do, she did it. And she was focused, but never with any delusion. You know, she was focused. She knew this is what she needed to do. And I remember she was calling herself an international hairstylist at the beginning when maybe she wasn't.
She knew.
But she had the vision, and guess what? She is now,
I know.
and she is doing that. So when I see your page and I see what you're doing, and that's why I know about I don't even know what balayage is, but anyway, I see. And then
You just know the word.
I just know the word.
It's good. It's a
and I
good
go there,
start.
and I haven't cut my hair. It's been a while because I go to her salon, and now she's left. But actually, my cousin works with her. 2 cousins. I've worked with her at her salon. So I have this whole new respect for people that do hair because you make people feel good.
Yeah.
And you turn their vision
Into reality.
into reality. So
we
it's something.
try.
And you're like
if it's doable.
exactly. And a hairdresser is very much like a therapist. You hear.
I think we should be paid a little bit
Exactly.
more just for that. But I love talking to my clients,
Right.
so I don't mind.
Yeah, and it must be okay. So, do your clients ever ask you questions, almost like you're on a podcast all the time? Do you get tired of, or do they know?
Not all of them.
Okay, but the ones
No.
obviously, some of them know.
Some of them, when they write to me on Instagram for their appointments, they're just gonna say like, "How's your book doing?"
Mm-hmm.
They're never gonna actually ask
Yeah.
me questions, and I think my chair is not the place for me to talk about that story either. I don't
Absolutely,
think.
yeah.
You
No,
know,
of course
like-
not. Yeah,
And I try. I'm very big. I have a attention problem.
you're a little ADD.
ADHD. Yeah, very much.
So do
Not
I.
hyper, so ADD. And
so my
I
wife
really
says.
I need to concentrate when I work, and if I have a big conversation, first of all, it's gonna take me twice the time to do your hair, and I don't necessarily have twice the time to do your hair, so I try to like focus on my work. But if they do talk to me about the story, I will respond and I will answer and I will tell them what they want to, like what they're seeking for as the answer. But I'm not gonna I'm not gonna like keep on talking about it. Like,
Am I doing that? Am I keep on talking?
no, but I mean, we're here for that today,
We're here
you know?
for that, yeah.
Exactly. So that's fine. But of course, people are going to be curious. And I can't, like, if I didn't want to talk about it, then don't write a freaking book. You know, I wrote a book because I still want to talk about it. And
Yeah.
I come to podcasts because I still want to talk about it. And
Well, because it's therapy, right?
it's
I mean,
therapy, and it's important for people to hear it
Yes.
because it's still there, and it's more than ever there. All the social media aspect, all the I want this, but not like in 2 years, I want it tomorrow. You know, and people focus so much on like the failures instead of focusing on what they've achieved, which is stupid. And that's why we're so negative all the time, is because we're drilled into thinking that if you don't look like this, or if you don't have this, then you're not it. Like you're not, it's not going to work out, or you're not good enough. You know, if you want to climb up a 12,000 feet mountain and you're up to 5,000, and you have 2 ways of thinking. Like you can say, oh, fuck, like I'm never ever going to reach 12,000 feet. It's too high. Or you could say, oh my God, I just fucking climbed 5,000 and I
That's
only
amazing.
have this left, and
Yeah.
I know I'll do it. And then analyze what you did wrong and why it took you so long to reach 5,000, and figure out what you can do for you to be better for the rest. Like, and that's also why sometimes I struggle to get along with people, is because my way of thinking is so much different than everybody else, and I'm not expecting anybody to think like me ever, because I was fortunate enough to learn something from what happened to me and not let it affect me negatively always, because it did affect me negatively at some point. But everything I've taken away from that was mostly positive, or if not, I try and turn it into something positive.
Mm-hmm. And your experience can also help other
I
younger
hope it
people
will.
as
Yeah.
well. they'll see you and people who have gone through a tough time and see how you've rebounded. Because I'm not just saying this. I can tell based on, I have good reads on people. That's why I play poker. and I can tell that this was obviously a very tough, difficult moment in your life, but you've turned it into a positive, and you're not moving on, you've moved on.
I have moved on.
And just because you talk about it doesn't mean that you're stuck in the past. It's the experiences that you had in the past that make you the person that you have today. You hear that all the time. Well, in your case, it really is. And I'm sure we shouldn't have any regrets in life. And I'm sure you do wake up and think, oh, had I done this? That's a normal feeling as a human being.
Yeah.
Maybe, had I gone left instead of turning right, or had I just gone down the road. I really feel that life, some people feel that destiny touches all of us, and c'est ton destin, it's like it's your destiny, this was supposed to happen. But I'm very much a person about it's circumstance, and had you not been with that person that night that introduced you to this would have never happened.
Never.
So it's circumstance. It truly is, because you were wrong place, wrong time.
Or right place, right time.
Or right place, right time, that we go through the moments that we go through in life. And so I'm excited that people are they're watching, listening in, and maybe if they're going through a struggle or a tough time in life, they can see your story, Melina, and realize that you could persevere, you could go through anything. Because I can't, I could sit here, ask all the questions like I've done, but to really truly understand, that's why I'm trying to get a grasp.
Yeah.
I did for the last hour and a half or so here on the drive-by, to really understand what it was like, what was going through your mind from the inception of this whole crazy story.
And there's so much more that we could talk about.
Which is in the book, no English version yet, Sans Filtre, No Filter, the translation in English. And, I'm going to go out, and I didn't buy the book yet. I was waiting to find out, because I was looking everywhere if there was an English version.
Yeah.
And Melina
Not
told
yet.
me when we were just pre-podcast sitting down and talking that there's no English version, but there may or may not be, she said to me. But I wanted to sit down, and I didn't want to be too influenced by a book. That's why even when I watched some other French podcasts, after 10 minutes, they were an hour long, whatever, I decided I want to ask the questions that I ask.
Yeah, for sure.
And make it this about, what my podcast is all about, getting to the root of what was going on with you. And it's about you, and it's your story. And no matter how people have painted it or the media has painted it, this is your true story. Not the book version, but the audio or visual if you're watching. So where do we go in terms of, where do you go from here now? So you're a hairstylist. What's next for you?
To be honest, I don't even know if I'm going to be a hairstylist for the rest of my life. It's truly something that I adore doing. Like, I love having my clients come over and get a big change and seeing them feel good about themselves. But like we spoke earlier, I feel like I have more in me to do more. I don't want to say than just be a hairdresser, but I mean, I don't know. I feel like I have a bigger purpose, which I can't really tell you what it is right now.
Because you don't know it yet? Or
because I don't know it yet.
You think about it every day, I'm sure.
I think about it all the time, and I don't want to do a big move and regret it after. So that's why I'm very big on like taking my time over decision making. I do want to do conferences in high school and college and youth centers. It's something that takes time. I've been talking about it for a long time. I have procrastinated because before I felt like I wasn't stable enough in my life to go through with it and to talk about life and being stable and working, and I just wasn't there yet. I wasn't stable. I didn't even have my own place. Like, I was always doing Granby, Montreal, Granby to work and sleep at a friend's place and a girl that I was dating and whatnot. So I just wanted to be stable, and now I'm starting, like, I have my own place since July this year,
In Montreal?
In Laval.
In Laval.
In
okay.
Laval.
That's where all my family lives.
And I'm really good, and work is so much better than it's very hard to be not to not have a paycheck every 2 weeks. Like, you have to do your own, and it's very demanding time wise. So conferences are very much something that I want to start up next year. So I'm giving myself another 2 months to finish it off, and then send it out to schools and everything in beginning of next year. But apart from that, to be honest, I'm very open. When you spoke to me earlier, I was like,
don't give it all away, by the way.
I'm not saying anything, but it's always like, whenever it's about speaking and interacting with people, it's always something that's gonna speak to me a lot, and something I can relate to, and something I enjoy doing. And it's not something I've actually tried a lot. Like, I've done podcasts, but not long ago I went to Gatineau, and I was invited for the rehab gala, which is like a whole bunch of people that are recognized for the difference that they're doing in the rehabilitation system in Gatineau. And I was invited to be the guest of honor. And I've never, like, I did podcasts. I'm not speaking in front of an audience. And weirdly, I wasn't even nervous. I was like, it's going to be fine. And I had a friend with me, and she was like, aren't you like stressing out right now? And I'm like, no, I'm not. If it goes wrong, it goes wrong, and I'm just not made to do this.
You're made to do something along these lines, because I saw you. So you were at the, I'll let you finish. You were,
yeah, so
you
I
had
was at the gala.
a live audience in front
A
of
live
you.
audience, and not like 5,000 people. It was like a small audience, but still. And I got on stage, and I sat down, and I was like sort of an interview like we're doing right now, but with someone talking to me and asking me questions. And it was like no one was there. And I thought, how am I, like, even my mom, she was like, how the hell do you do this? You would ask me to speak in front of 5 people and I would be shaking. And I was like, I don't know. I'm comfortable doing it. And it's something that I do want to maybe look into, because I think, like you said, there's not a lot of people that are able to do that or be comfortable doing it, or that can express themselves the right way for an audience. And I know I still have a lot of work to do, but it's something that I would be interested in. But like I said, there's so many options out there. I wouldn't know where to start.
You also have to be partnered with the right people,
Yeah.
and the right intentions. And I'm sure there's going to be, people from everywhere trying to get your attention, try this, do this, if they haven't already. But there's one thing I told you before we started the podcast, is I realized from the stuff I was watching on YouTube how comfortable you are. And I had the same reaction. And I remember telling my wife just a few weeks ago that not everybody, okay, first of all, everybody and their dog, I always talk about this.
What?
And their aunt and uncle have a podcast. Everybody has a podcast.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Everybody has a podcast.
Yeah,
it's
I get it.
easy. Well, it's not easy, but anyone could start a podcast nowadays. You walk into any store, you get the equipment, get any mic. They don't even have to be, high level podcast mics, and anybody could talk and do it. But I'm still a proponent, having done it for a long time, that having done broadcasting, and this is broadcasting of some sort, it's just a new broadcasting, that you have to have natural ability, you have to have talent, you have to have skill, you have to be able to speak comfortably, you have to be able to make it as natural as possible. This has felt really natural. Like, I'm just talking to you.
I think we get along too.
We get along.
Like, there's no...
We get along. And I could tell, even without I've never met you. I've never seen you. You DM me. I was going to DM you. You DM me first.
Funny.
Weird. We were
That's
talking about
crazy.
this. And I could just tell by watching you on your social media that you have this natural ability to speak, and comfortably. And not everybody has that. As I said, too many people doing it. Not everybody has the natural ability.
Not everybody should.
Not everybody should, and they don't for that matter. So it's just a matter of figuring out who you would speak to, how you would, what content, what would we talk about, stuff like that. Maybe it's not necessarily a podcast. Maybe it's, who knows what it is, but you have this.
I'm going to go and tell you the weather today.
Yeah, not the weather. Exactly. So the weather, traffic, all that stuff we leave for, the old ways of doing stuff, which I did for many years, but we've moved beyond that, where 2 people, 3 people, 4, it doesn't matter how many, could sit together with microphones, turn on something, and boom, you're there instantly. It's really wild, you know? And based on your life, what you've done, you know, you're, like your mom said, maybe you did come out of your shell, and the experiences that you had brought you to this point where you're like, fuck it, I don't give a shit. I could talk to anybody. I've been through hell and back, and there's nothing that's going to ever make me feel uncomfortable. You don't like it, you don't like it. Here's my story, Melina, and there we go. So I think that's the point where you're at. So with anything you execute in life, whether it's hairstyling or maybe your next thing that you want to do, you're going to be able to do it because you're comfortable in your own skin. And that's the number one thing, the most important thing when you're doing that kind of stuff, is to be comfortable with who you are and not be afraid to say what you want to say. Now, we may have different opinions on things. That's great. You don't want to, you know, have the same opinion. It would be boring. If we were doing something different now and it's you and I just chatting, you don't want to agree with everything, but you want to have the mutual respect to sit across from each other and do it over and over again and say, hey, I like Frank. I like how he thinks. I'm not really on the same page here. And I like how Melina said, I don't know, but we could have a conversation about it. I think that's the important thing with anything you do in that milieu, right?
Yeah.
On those platforms.
I think that's maturity as well.
That's
just in
maturity.
general, to be able to have a conversation without necessarily just agreeing all the time with the other person.
Absolutely.
Like, so many people, they just don't say what they actually think. And that's confronting. Like, I know a lot of people are uncomfortable with me sometimes.
Why do you think?
When my friends are asking me advice or they're asking me my opinion on a situation that happened or something that they did, I always tell them, if you're not ready to hear what I have to say, do not ask me, because you know I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
Good.
It's just going to come out the way it is. And unfortunately, that's how I am. And even my mom, like, we got into a fight last week and she was like, you know, your way of thinking is not always the right one. And I said, I know, truly, it's not the right one, because I know I'm way too harsh. I know I say things and I should have more of a filter, but I don't. And I can try and be nicer, especially to my mom. Like, I should really be more gentle. Poor mom.
But sometimes parents get the brunt of it, you know, like
I know.
all of you. Not
but
just,
I try to help her, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, sometimes I'm harsh with her, but it's just because for me to understand something, you have to like put it in my face, you know? And that's what I try and do with people. And I feel like at the end of the day, it still works. Maybe not right off the bat, because they get frustrated that I said my truth and I said what they didn't want to hear.
Oh, Melina, in 2023, you can't tell the truth anymore.
I know.
When you're too honest about
I missed
whatever.
too many years.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I didn't
keep up.
I didn't mean it like that, but it's, I find one of the reasons why I started this podcast after, you know, my radio career ended, and didn't officially end, but it's hasn't been anywhere in the last 4 years after 3 decades. But I realized that, you know, things change, you move on, and I don't want to do anything in life now where I get micromanaged, told what to do, canceled. If you want to cancel me all you want. If you don't want the truth, go listen to somebody else that's going to feed you a bunch of stuff that makes you, you know, sleep well with your head on their pillow at night, la 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 la. But I'm like you. I'm going to tell you exactly how I feel, my thoughts, but I believe in that. First and foremost, I believe in freedom of speech. So you're able to tell your story the way you want. What happened? Oh boy.
We don't have any memory. Where were we at?
The video just cut out, and we're back. This doesn't mean anything if you're watching, but my video card basically ran out and had to restart the video. That's never happened.
We talk too much.
And I've had, Melina, I've had people stay here. We're approaching 2 hours, but I've had a couple of people here approach 3 hours.
Right.
And one past 3 hours. So I like to talk too. But we're going to wrap things up.
Yep.
I wanted to ask you, do you remember what we were talking about before the video went off? I don't remember. Oh, about being true to yourself.
Yeah.
And being an independent thinker and having the freedom to say what you want to say, which is what you're about. Sans filtre, no filter. I wanted to ask you about the, on your left hand, well, you have 2 tattoos.
Yeah.
What do those tattoos mean?
So this is my dad's year of birth.
Okay. 1967.
And, yep. And this is, it's written Moses d'affaires. And that's do you know what that means a little bit?
Say which one?
Moses d'affaires. It's like a saying when you say like, oh my God.
Yeah, Moses d'affaires. Okay.
Yeah, so that was my mom's mom that passed away this year. And she always used to say that when she was like overwhelmed with, if I was telling her a story that was like some shit that happened to me when I was a little bit too advanced in alcohol. Like she thought it was funny, but she'd be like, Moses d'affaires all the time.
So you just got
and
a
she
tattoo.
passed and I got it tattooed because I always feel like she's with me all the time.
That's nice.
Yeah.
And the two tattoos, the reason I'm not doing tattoo talk, but the reason, I mentioned it is because they're predominantly visible at the same spot on both your hands.
Yeah.
So I thought.
I mean, I wanted this one to look like a stamp when you go to a club.
Yeah, and you get
because
stamped.
it's. I don't know. I feel like my grandma needs to be remembered and seen all the time. So everyone that's been asking me what it is, it's like, oh, that's my grandma. Like I don't want to forget. I'll never forget about her, but I never want to stop talking about her because that's one person. I still have the video on my phone. I'll show you. That's one person. Not like a few months before she passed.
When did she pass away?
This year, April.
Okay.
And she was saying, she basically said on the video, and she didn't know I was filming her, but she was like basically telling us that we had to like stop wasting our time with like stupid shit and just get up and go and do what we want and have fun and not, work somewhere that we hate, or that basically life is short. And she was telling us to go dance also, but and she was like such a beautiful person, and she had never anything negative to say. Never, ever, ever, ever.
Even considering what happened, and that she was always there for you.
She was just, when I told her I had a girlfriend, I told her I was in a relationship.
Well,
I called her.
Hang on, before the girlfriend part, what about the whole going to jail?
Yeah, she was crying so much when I got arrested. But once I was in jail, I was calling her sometimes. So when I called my mom, my grandma was at home with her. And we used to talk, and I used to call her mon esti. Like, we were close, you know what I mean?
That is very close to call.
We were like, she was like the best grandma ever, but we were really, really close. Like, I was calling her, I'd be like, hey, mon esti,
which is a swear word.
It's a swear word.
Really bad.
Like,
with,
it's bad, but it was like
tabernacle Christian
tabernacle.
thing. Yeah.
It was just, anyway. And I called her when I was in jail, and I just started to date the girl. And she was like, oh, what's new with you? And I was like, I'm in a relationship. And she told me, how did he come in? I was like, no, grandma. It's a woman. And she was like,
okay.
Stop it. And she never believed me up until like her last day on earth. She always thought I was joking. And I was like, Grandma, I'm with a woman. She was like, no. She didn't want to have a bar of it. She was so funny.
And how old was she? She passed away?
84.
Okay. Yeah, we learn a lot from those generations.
Yeah.
Elder people, when they say, in the beginning when you're younger, you feel like they're nagging you, or they're like, oh yeah, but then you realize you hit a certain age, which you hit that age with all the experience that you have and everything you went through in your life, and you realize her words, what they meant and what they still mean to you now that she's passed on. Yeah. So the book is called Sans Filtre, no filter, no English version yet. You want the English version, you got the Drive-By podcast.
But subscribe button on Drive-By.
Exactly. And if you have to put it in Google Translate, whatever you need to do. I don't know how you're going to do it, cut and paste.
You know what?
If
I think online, there is an app, though, that you can translate.
You could do
books.
that, yeah.
Yeah.
Until, like, what you told me before the podcast, there may or may not be an English version. You don't know, probably not.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to get it because now I want to read it, especially after meeting you, Melina, and having this conversation. 2-hour conversation with you.
It goes so fast.
And this was episode 138 of the Drive-By podcast. Please 5-star it on Spotify, or review and comment on Apple. And you'll get to see it as well if you want to see Melina. And hopefully she's not mad at me for making her cry a couple of times. But I don't think it was me that made you cry.
No,
it was the conversation.
Yeah.
And it was an amazing. This is no doubt one of my favorite podcasts that I've done. 138 episodes, because you're the real deal. I've enjoyed chatting with you. I wish you the best of luck with
That's
whatever
so
you
nice.
do in your future. And I hope we keep in touch. Your smile really lights up the room, and I'm the only person, one-man show here during the podcast.
Thank you.
And I wish you nothing but success. I think people, you wrote this book. Don't judge a book by its cover, even though all the information is in the book, and you heard it here today on the drive-by. There is somebody behind everybody, the real person, and you find out all that stuff about the person when they sit down here, like you have on the drive-by, and have the conversation you did with me today for 2 hours. You learned a lot. I've learned a lot about you. Merci beaucoup.
Thank
Thank you,
you
Melina.
so much for having me.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to episode 138 of the Drive-By podcast. It is sponsored by Les Délices Lafrenais. You can't go to somebody's house. I know I'm Italian, and maybe you're not, and maybe you don't do it this way, but you can't go to somebody's house when you're invited over as a guest empty-handed. So the next time, just check out Les Délices Lafrenais. Voted Montreal's top bakery and dessert shop year after year. Go in. They have an assortment of great desserts. I personally love their mini cannolis. I love the full-size cannolis. I'm not going to lie, but I don't think I need the full-size cannolis. You could get the full size. I get the mini cannolis. They have those too. And my favorite, their lobster tails are this big. Like they're this big. I have to cut them in 3. Maybe I should cut them in 4. That's how big they are. And they have an assortment of great desserts and more. Everything else. Check out the newly expanded Lafrenais Brossard, one of the 5 locations around the Montreal area. When you head in there, say hi to Anthony and tell him you heard this on the Drive-By podcast. He knows, because I'll tell him too, because I spend a lot of time there. When I'm not here in the podcast studio, I'm spending all my time at Lafrenais. Great staff. Check them out. And for your custom cakes and all of your life's celebrations, you could get anything you want to design. They'll help you design it at Les Délices Lafrenais. Check them out. And thank you so much for watching the Drive-By podcast.
This is the Drive-By with Freeway Frank.
Watch all episodes of the Drive-By on YouTube. Listen in on Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, Podbean, and tune in.